Hey guys, this is Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm. Today we're going to talk about if you're just getting started out with regenerative gardening, what does that mean? What should you be doing if you want the healthiest produce for your family and the healthiest soil, the best performing plants? It starts with the ground, the soil, regenerative style. Let's go. It's March, it's crazy, it's gonna be 90 degrees today. I am starting seeds, I am keeping seeds alive, I am hardening off seedlings, I am planting seedlings, I'm watering cover crops, I'm doing infrastructure stuff. Ugh. All kinds of things happening. And we have our on-farm workshop happening next month. We still have 4 spots left. If you wanted to join us, it's all farm to table food all day long, hands-on in the garden stuff. So building tunnels, weeding, cover cropping, terminating cover crops, all that fun stuff we're doing here at the farm. I'll put the link below. All that to say, this video is going to be pretty unedited because I'm just too busy. So when we're talking about starting in the regenerative garden, if you have already been following a lot of our regenerative practices, right? So things like cover cropping your garden, things like inoculating your seeds, keeping mulch layers on the soil, limiting disruption to the soil, you probably have a decent soil life going already. Not to say you can't bump it up and help it out, but there are things we're going to talk about that you can help to speed that process along. But if you're just getting started on regenerative stuff, there can be a few things that help. Obviously, there's always like some little products here and there I'm going to talk to you guys about, mostly microbial type of amendments. And in fact, another new one that I'm really excited about. I'll share that at the end. But those things are really mostly helpful for when you're starting out with regenerative style gardening. When you garden in a container or container style garden, so pots, raised beds, containers, grow bags. You guys know how I feel about grow bags. Please don't use the polyester ones because it's a microplastic nightmare. But anyway, use burlap or wool if you're going to use a grow bag. Anyway, if you're using those types of growing containers, you're going to have less microbial soil activity because those containers, the soil in them is subject to very, very harsh extremes. It gets really hot, it gets really cold, it gets really dry, it gets really wet. And also when we're talking about like pots and containers, they're just constantly leaching and they don't have the same type of soil microbial connection to the ground that an in-ground bed has. So in-ground beds tend to need this stuff less, I find. And raised beds and containers tend to need some of this stuff a little bit more. But the first thing I'm thinking about in spring is that I'm not over-fertilizing. So I'm not talking about, like, we all know that if you over-fertilize your seedlings, you can burn your seedlings. That's not what I'm talking about here. I am talking about the soil profile. So what can happen if we fertilize our soil, if we fertilize our plants too early in spring and we do it excessively too much, which we tend to want to do because we see these little baby plants and we're like, I want to help you. I want to fertilize you. Let me help you grow. But what can happen is it's actually counterproductive. If we over-fertilize in spring, it can actually lead to our plants becoming lazy because what's happening in the soil profile is the plants, nature is actually much smarter than we give it credit for. But the plants actually kind of know, okay, I need nitrogen this time of year. They know what they need. So they'll start sending out root exudates through their roots that attract the correct microbial profile. Those are things that can help mineralize the existing organic matter into the soil and mineralize it and turn it into nutrients for the plants. So the plant knows, okay, I need nitrogen. It's going to start sending out signals via its root exudates to attract the right microbial mix to its rhizosphere, root area. And then it forms this little association. It's feeding those microbes with its exudates. And then in turn, the rhizobia, the microbes, the fungi that are attracted to that area start to provide all of that to the plant. It's a beautiful thing. But what can happen is if we start to fertilize the plant gets the message of, okay, I don't need this nitrogen. Therefore, I'm not going to send out those exudates because I'm already getting my nitrogen without the exudates. So it doesn't form that nice little rhizosphere. Now, that doesn't mean it totally eliminates it, but it does slow it down. And so then what happens is, okay, if we stop then fertilizing our plants, then the plant it doesn't have that rhizosphere in place to help it do it naturally. So then that's when we start seeing plants that are fertilizer dependent, right? That they need that. This is what we see in big scale ag, right? Because we've decimated this soil microbial population so much in that type of a growing environment, there's just so much dependency on these fertilizers. So until we can build up that organic matter level and the soil life level, it just doesn't perform very well without synthetics. So all that to say, how do we do that in the home garden, right? So one is, yes, avoiding trying to fertilize too much, especially at the beginning. Now, I do fertilize, and you guys know in my book, if you've got my book, I know a lot of you guys have grabbed it. If you have, give it a little plug below, I'd appreciate it. But I have a recipe in my book, of course, for my alfalfa fertilizer. And I do love the alfalfa fertilizer. It's a slow release nitrogen. It also has a natural plant growth hormone in it, but it also has something else important, which is organic matter. This is not just a liquid fertilizer. It has a carbon component. So that means it's going to actually provide some organic matter to the soil. It's going to create some actual food for the microbes down and in the soil. It's going to be less impactful on the rhizosphere than a straight liquid fertilizer would. So I love the alfalfa one. Again, if you had a chance to do, a cover crop, a nitrogen fixing cover crop, for example, then you don't need to use a nitrogen fertilizer, right? Especially if you did it and you added some rhizobia. That's what's going to get that going. Okay, you might be saying now, what do you mean a cover crop? Can I still do that? Why, yes, friend, I'm so glad you asked. You can still do a cover crop, and you should. We are now 8 weeks before my average last frost in Colorado. Of course, I don't think we've had a frost for weeks already. It's a whole nother topic that I'm terrified about, but it's been really warm. That to say, in a typical winter, usually I'd be looking at still 8 weeks before my last frost, but I could still be cover cropping now. I can absolutely cover crop this time of year, and it thrives. It does great. Now I'm going to go through some of my favorite options. The one that I've planted in and I have going now is oats and peas. And there's a reason that I love oats and peas in the spring and also late fall, like end of October. And that's because they germinate and grow in cold temperatures. So I can use my shoulder seasons to cover crop my garden. Now I do have a little guide in the book, 2 different cover crops. So let's just walk through it really quickly. I'm gonna breeze over them. So I have all the different cover crops listed here. And then we have obviously what time of year they should be planted, temperature for germination, and then we also go into different uses. So cover crops have all kinds of different benefits. Now they will all provide help with preventing weeds. They're all going to help provide organic matter. But for example, some of them like peas, alfalfa, hairy vetch, those are ones that are going to fixate nitrogen for you. So in the book, we literally mark okay, which ones are really good at what? So the ones that are good at fixing nitrogen are usually going to be legumes. They usually need a rhizobial inoculant that you add when you plant the seed that helps them to do that. So that means I'm not going to have to fertilize with my nitrogen if I'm using peas. So I have the peas in there. And then we also have some cover crops that are good at scavenging excess nitrogen. So if there's extra nitrogen in the soil, say it's the fall and you put some manure down and you don't want it to all leach out, you could plant a nitrogen scavenging cover crop like oats in my mix as well. That is going to help keep that from just leaching out, into the waterways down the street or what have you. So that's always a nice one to have. There are a lot of cover crops that are really good for beneficial insects. So things like buckwheat, lacy phacelia, ones that are good for that. So maybe I'm going to be growing those, maybe more of an undercrop. And then there's also ones that are good for erosion control and creating large amounts of organic matter, all that stuff. In the book, we do also talk about recommended termination, of course, for all of these different cover crops. But for oats and peas, it's pretty easy. All we have to do is cut it down. I'll link the video below where I show actually doing this in the spring. And then remember, we also have the full online course if you're more of a visual person to watch it. I'll link that as well. And so when we're talking about cover cropping, how do we terminate? So this one I'm going to terminate, it's spring, right? So I'll probably have 6 to 7 weeks of good growth on this cover crop in fairly warm temperatures this spring. So I'm anticipating that I'm going to be at flowering stage by mid-May, which is when I'd be planting my tomatoes, my zucchinis, my peppers, etc. That means I can terminate my cover crop just by smashing it down. I use something heavy. I usually use my big old angle iron and I just smash it down, and then you can tarp it. You could also cut it if it's at flowering stage, but really oats and peas, they're a pretty easy one to terminate. Smashing it down and tarping it for about a week is going to take care of it. So really like this one because it's easy to terminate, and unlike something like ryegrass, like annual rye, or what's the other one that I hate to terminate? Oh, hairy vetch. Hairy vetch, if you get it to the right stage, it's actually really easy to terminate, but it also will create a weedy mess if you let it go. So oats and peas, we don't have to worry about that. So anyway, some kind of a cover crop in the spring is going to take care of multiple things for you, right? It's going to grow your organic matter. It's literally going to create a mulch layer in place that you don't have to worry about. Has it been contaminated with herbicide? Is this, is the straw going to like blow away? It's attached to your soil and it's creating organic matter. So there's so many benefits to the cover crop. And I know it feels like a little extra work, but it actually saves you a lot because you're not having to bring in the mulch. You often won't have to bring in nitrogen, all that stuff. Anyway, I'm going to put the link for my favorite seed company below. It's actually Albert Lee Seed out of Minnesota, right by our farm, and they grow all their own seed. Highly recommend it. Really, really good germination rates on those. All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is I mentioned that there are some of these things that are helpful, right, when we're starting out in the regenerative garden. Now, like I said, if you're following these practices, you probably won't need to be adding a lot of this stuff. And that's the goal, is that we don't really have to buy stuff, right? There's a whole chapter in my book dedicated to the garden where you don't have to buy anything, and that is the goal. But sometimes in the beginning, especially if you're starting with soil that is pretty bad, or you haven't been cover cropping, you haven't been mulching it, that's where it can be helpful to start integrating a product that will help build up the soil life, right? I'm not talking about like fertilizers or chemicals or herbicides. I'm talking about things that contain natural microbial inoculants and amendments. All right, so I'm going to talk you through a couple that I use. One is the stuff from AEA. So Advancing Eco Ag, John Kemp's company, great company. This one I have tested, right? I use this on all of my seeds. BioCoat Gold. And then I'm really excited that also this year, you guys might have remembered if you watched the farm videos from last year, everything that we applied to like our corn was shipped in these huge like 45-gallon barrels. Not really accessible for home gardeners, but they decided to start making it accessible for home growers and market farmers, that they were going to make it in a more accessible size. So we've got MicroPack, which is the micronutrient blend. So that's got things like boron, cobalt, copper, iron, manganese. So if you want to grow really, really nutrient-dense food, micronutrients are helpful for that. Then we've got Revenant Charge. So this is a soil biology boost. So this has sugars, lactic acids in it. It improves the availability of minerals. Okay, so we mix all of I use all of these together, and I'm going to be doing a test today. So I have 2 rows of cover crops going side by side. I'm going to test this protocol, and I'm also going to test another one. I just am really curious to see which one does better. You guys know how my testing brain works. And then we also get MacroPack. So this is the one that has a macronutrient blend. So it's a 2-2-2. It's a nitrogen, phosphate, a little calcium, a little magnesium, corn steep powder. Oh, this is the one that smells like a distillery to me. I remember when we opened this one last year, we opened it in the barn. Anyway, it smelled like a little sweet corn distillery. So that is one that if you're starting out, again, just getting into this regenerative stuff, that AEA protocol is a great option. Now there is another company this is the other one I'm testing. I'm doing a side by side. I have not been able to test this one yet. So you guys know how I feel. I don't love to recommend things that I have not tried myself, but I wanted to mention this company because I am very excited that they went to the initiative and the effort of creating a soil supplement that does not use plastic. You guys know how I feel about it. Unfortunately, we're finding that one of the biggest sources, at least on an agricultural scale, of plastic contamination is the containers that everything comes in. So with that to say, this company wrote to me and they were like, we are now doing these products that don't come in plastic. So everything is packaged in cardboard and aluminum, which, hallelujah. Why did it take this long? Anyway, it's called Just Good Soil. I'm going to test this one. So they told me that they have a couple things. There's a soil supplement protocol. They said this one you mix together and you apply. It's a mix of, so we've got like seaweed, We have magical microbes, beneficial bacteria and fungi. And then we have mighty microalgae. Anyway, it says mix them together, add it. It gives you, you know, how much. Both of these give you how much to put in. And then they also have this other one. Now, I will say Just Good Soil, the other thing I like about their whole idea is that they do a soil test along with this protocol. So you send in your soil test and they tell you what to add, but they are using the old-fashioned soil test, the chemical-based one, which if you've read the book, you know that there's a better soil test called the Haney test that actually measures the microbial response in the soil and the respiration. So to me, if you're trying to do a regenerative style garden and you're focusing on soil life, that's the testing we would want to be using, would be Haney. Just a small little nitpicky detail on my part, but also I love this. Regenerative gardening is just good soil. Ah, look at that, that's cute. I did not partner, we had nothing to do, I had nothing to do with any of this, but anyway. Okay, so this is and then this is the other protocol that you can get, which is called the Essential Nutrient Protocol. And yeah, supposedly when you do your soil test, they kind of tell you, like, here's what you need to apply. I'm guessing this is a granular, yep. So we've got a granular in here. This one's called the Soil Life Kickstarter. Awakens new growth, powerful soil building blocks, beneficial microbe support. I just love this cardboard packaging. It just makes me really happy. It does label, it does tell you how much. So this is a little bit higher in nitrogen than the other one. This is an 851 granular. So again, a little bit heavier on the nitrogen. So again, be careful. If you know, don't just willy-nilly apply stuff to your soil, I always say. We've got this one, which is a soil recharger. This one also has some nitrogen in it. This is a 532. Now, I always like to try to use things that don't have phosphorus in them, honestly, or very, very low levels of phosphorus, because I already have a really high phosphorus soil. Now, they also do have, oh, I like that it tells you how much, 2.8 million total beneficial bacterial colony forming units. It tells you how much mycorrhiza. Oh, I like that. I like that info. Okay, and then there's this Rise Garden Booster. What is this? I can't. There's this one too. It says this is a 335, but I like I do like the transparency of this. I like when they tell you exactly how much microbial stuff is in there, because there's really no regulation on all of this stuff yet. Like, oh, you have to, you know, it's not FDA regulated soil stuff. So they could say, you know, yeah, here's this microbial amendment, and you buy it and you use it, but it actually doesn't do anything. There's no regulation on like that it has to contain X many, you know, million mycorrhiza, whatever. So a little intimidating. Again, guys, you don't have to use any of this stuff. You really don't. You really don't. Is it helpful? Again, your biggest bang for the buck, always, is going to be some kind of an inoculant on your seed, like the AEA BioCoat Gold or the Bigfoot that I've recommended before. Those all work. And then focusing on regenerative stuff like cover cropping and inoculate that cover crop seed. Biggest bang for the buck. But if you're starting out or if you're using containers, that's where stuff like this can be really helpful. I dropped one on the ground. Anyway, I'm going to do a side-by-side. I've got 2 cover cropped rows. Actually, I have all of my cover cropped rows over in my garden. And I'm going to do a side-by-side. I'm going to do one with the AEA protocol, and I'm going to do one with Just Good Soil. And we are going to do a side-by-side. We'll check back in a month and see if they look any different. I think the proof is always in the old proverbial pudding. You know what I'm saying? All right. I hope that helped. Again, don't feel like you have to buy anything. You don't have to. Just seeds. Seeds is a great start. Albert Lee for seeds, AEA for soil stuff, or Just Good Soil. I'm going to put a code, a discount code. You guys get 15% actually off the Just Good Soil stuff. And then I have a link for AEA as well. Okay, that's it, I guess, for today. I hope this is all helpful for everyone, and enjoy spring. If you want to sign up for our on-farm workshop, I'll put that link below. And if you want to grab the book, I'll put that link below as well. All right, see you guys around here next time at the farm.